there is a risk involved with any drug that you take. Can you talk about a positive experience or an experience that stands out with either weed or psychedelics?
Sure.
That changed the way that you think about things?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I love this mantra. I have this mantra from my buddy Brian Muka. I took a medicine and the medicine is working. And I have been in a combo experience, which again is not a hallucinogenic or psychedelic, but just in the shit, and just I took a medicine, the medicine is working. I took a medicine, the medicine is working. And I have not personally had that much experience with psychedelics, and so thus I have not personally had a negative trip, right? I've had a couple of beautiful experiences with psilocybin, magic mushrooms, which has led me to be very, very connected to my natural world and the world around me and to other people, changed and altered my perception of time and space and how those things interact, and opened my mind to the idea that, there are no such, or rather, things do not happen in opposition to nature, merely to an opposition of what we know about nature, which is a rough St. Augustine quote. But in light of my lack of experience in those, I'd love to talk about cannabis because I am very well versed in
yes
the realm.
Preach the word of cannabis,
the healing of the nations. And this is I don't necessarily know why, or I have maybe some ideas of why this is such an important topic to me. And I haven't talked a ton publicly about it, but alcohol is such a prevalent drug in our society that it's so prevalent that I believe, and this is unofficial, but poll 100 people and maybe 10 of those people will actually call alcohol a drug. Right? No, it's just a drink. It's a substance. It's a thing. It's so prevalent in college societies. It's wrapped around sports, work, everywhere, right? And the reality of the situation is it's a poison. And I'm saying this on the tail end of drinks in the teens last night, teens in number from my best friend and college roommate's wedding, and at the same time, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've drank this calendar year, in August now, because I know that it is a poison to your body. Like, people die of drinking too much. People die of drinking and driving. People ruin their fucking lives over alcohol, and I've seen it happen. People lose their inhibitions. They do dumb shit. I think we've all been around or know people who have had very negative experiences with people with alcohol, or gotten into fights, or, God forbid, maybe sexual violence or things of that nature. And it's just not like that with cannabis. Like, when you smoke weed, like, you still stay within yourself. You don't lose your inhibitions. You drive slower, right?
More paranoid,
more fucking paranoid, right? Like you love more, you laugh more, you vibe more with people, and cannabis has helped open up myself to myself. And I think one of the things that people get paranoid about with weed especially, or cannabis especially, is when, in my experience and the experience of so many people, when you smoke and you're not living in congruence with who you really are, weed will point that shit out real quick. Like, you'll start thinking about that thing that you did, or what you've been doing, or that thing you said, and you don't want to hurt anybody on, when you're smoking.
It brings out
it brings out that kindness,
hippie, pacifist,
exactly,
kind persona.
And so I've got a buddy, Angelo Cisco, who's got a company. I almost wore the shirt today. It's Alpha Hippie, right? That's his company, Alpha Hippie, and I fucking love that, because I will throw down and be a fucking savage with anybody, and 99% of the time, like, I'm going to be kind and loving and empathetic. And I think that's the way that men should be, and I think that's the mold that men can find themselves in and change the world in, by adopting that more feminine, divine, femininity, right? Like be a fucking savage, be an animal in the gym, but sprinkle that shit. Like, you don't need that shit all the time. Like, you should marinate in kindness, and that's what cannabis will do versus something like alcohol. So if it's having a choice, like, like libation of choice for your teenage daughter,
Yeah.
Have her smoke weed and stay on the couch, as opposed to drink and go out, right?
Yeah. In my experience, alcohol has been the gateway drug for me. Every single new drug that I've tried, I've been drunk as fuck.
Because your inhibitions have been down.
Yeah. And when I'm high, I've never wanted to or have tried another drug when I'm high. Maybe if I'm drinking first and I smoke a little weed, I'll have alcohol and weed in my system. But for the most part, when I'm not in the throes of a panic attack, which has happened a few times, I've had many positive experiences with weed. I just want to make that clear. I feel connected. I feel kind. I feel like my mind is exploring things, like you said, that may be off kilter. It points those things out in your life. And weed is a drug that I want to be part of my life and get better at consuming, to be honest, because I know that when I do have those freakouts, there is something that I'm not in touch with or something that I'm avoiding. And for you, your life may be better without weed. That's personal for you. If it's you always have to think about what's the net positive of doing a drug. And for me, even though I've had freakouts, weed has been a net positive in my life. I've come to many spiritual, that sounds cliche, but things that I've realized when I've been high, or conversations that I've had that I would have never had I not been in that state. And that has outweighed all the bad experiences that I've had on weed, the ones where I really felt in touch with people. I was walking around the city high during the day and I'm just feeling connected, or I'm in nature, and just that connection that you feel that I haven't felt on other drugs like alcohol that are there.
I would wager marijuana is a net positive for the vast majority of people out there. And, I think it's also to point out dosage, right?
Mm-hmm.
For inexperienced people, it's really, you think of just smoking weed is like one dose, and the cannabis strains are different. There's two major strains, sativa and indica. One's kind of like a upper mental, the other's like a body, like down chill, right? Mixing those at the wrong time, like that could send you in a bad way. And if you take 3 bong rips of a high THC cannabis, or you smoke a whole joint and you haven't smoked since you were 22 years old, now you're in your 50s because you heard the Auxoro podcast, like that's the equivalent of going into a bar and ordering the bottle of tequila and drinking the whole thing, right? Like you would take a shot or have a drink or have a sip or have a beer. Like I think it's really important for people who are new to cannabis, or who want to experiment with it, or have limited experience with it, is to remember the dosage. Like think about it from a drink perspective. Like you'd like to have like 2 glasses of wine and you're okay, but 4 and you're taking your top off dancing on the table. Like, cannabis won't make you do either, but err on the side of a quarter of the joint versus roasting the whole fucking thing. And you will have a different experience between those 2 amounts.